Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for August 9th, 2021. Please note, I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about, and for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So today I'm looking at potential Tropical Cyclone 6. It was the MS-94L, but given the potential for impacts to some of the Leeward Islands and Greater Antilles down the line, it's now a potential tropical cyclone. We're not 100% sure if it is a tropical cyclone yet. It's definitely close, though. You can see these areas, like little areas of convection, kind of trying to rotate around the center, or what center trying to get going. But so far, all we have evidence for is a very sharp and well-defined wave axis somewhere here. We'll see if it's trying to close off. So far, again, no evidence that it's tropical cyclone, but it's getting very close to being one. Probably will end up being one anyway soon. We have some convection here in the northern area. The convection kind of over the like the area that's trying to form into a center has kind of dissipated today during the diurnal convective minimum, and so we're left with this kind of area of disorganized bursting right now to the north. So let's see if that kind of tugs at the developing circulation or not. And hopefully we'll have an idea of where the low level center is, and that will give us a good idea of the actual track. Now, looking at the water vapor imagery here, you can see that shear isn't really a problem. There's good outflow out to the west, out to the north. In general, there's a decent amount of outflow, and you can tell the shear is pretty low, and that's not really an issue for the storm. The one thing that is going to kind of plague it for the next couple of days is a large area of dry air right ahead of the system. It's not affecting it quite yet, it seems. It's trying to wrap in right now, and it's beginning to do so, but it isn't quite expected to hamper the system quite yet. But that is going to be one major factor that could keep it weak in the next couple of days. Now let's take a look at some radar out of Barbados, and you can see, yeah, there's a very nice, well-defined rotation. It almost looks like a weak tropical cyclone, but again, there isn't really any evidence of westerlies here, partly because there isn't really any convection down here where you would have westerlies, but also, yeah, even if you kind of trace what is there, it's not really much of any westerly flow, it seems. We'll get recon in here tomorrow morning, but so far it doesn't look like there's really anything. But the kind of the way it's rotating, it almost seems to be on the verge of becoming a tropical cyclone. But again, not quite there yet. Well, now let's look a bit into the future. This is a GFS forecast, and this is for about 24 hours from now, so sometime Tuesday evening. And what the GFS does here is basically this dry air kind of wraps around as PTC 6 comes up north, and so after strengthening a little bit, it basically loses all of its convection as the dry air gets right in the core here. We're not too sure if this is going to happen. There have been one or two models like the HWRF, especially, which kind of keeps it in a cocoon away from dry air. Instead, the dry air kind of wraps around, but only goes east of it and doesn't really get into the central region. That allows it to get a bit stronger. Of course, the HWRF isn't very good with with something that's not a tropical cyclone yet, and it does seem to be overzealous right now. So I wouldn't trust that forecast. But if it can keep a kind of cocoon and moisture air, it might be able to hold its own before it starts interacting with some of the Greater Antilles. Further down the line, so this is Wednesday evening, it looks like the general area will moisten up. So on a Wednesday, we're probably going to see that dry air become less and less of an issue and become more replaced by the possibility for land interaction, as it is generally in the area of the Greater Antilles. What GFS does here is it kind of takes a bit north of Hispaniola and rakes it right over Cuba and kind of kills off the circulation. So while the National Hurricane Center doesn't explicitly call for uh, to open up into a wave, this is something that's certainly possible if it takes a track like this over a lot of land. You could see it try to become a wave again for a little bit uh, if this does happen. But we'll have to see again. We don't have a low level center, so we don't know if it'll go north or south. That's something we can't really know until we've got better observations and have an actual tropical cyclone on our hands. But this is one thing that's kind of keeping it weak on the GFS and could keep it weak, but it certainly isn't something that is 100% certain, of course. Now, another thing too is the upper level environment in the Bahamas isn't really all that good. We have kind of a pair of upper lows or kind of upper troughing here, and this is keeping a lot of westerly wind aloft in this region. And while we do have an upper anticyclone that's currently keeping favorable shear conditions over PTC 6 right now, it's going to be met with resistance because of these two upper lows, and so PTC 6 might start kind of traveling into this area where there's southwesterly wind aloft, and so that would uh, start to shear it. So even so, you could tell that it's not going to become especially strong at least before it gets into kind of around the Florida Straits. It's because there's going to be it's going to be interacting with dry air. It's going to be interacting with the land. And it might be sheared unless it's somehow relatively strong at this point. So it doesn't seem that it has much of a chance to become strong just because there's just not a whole lot going for it in the next few days. Now it could start to try to get going in the eastern Gulf of Mexico because these two upper lows are kind of retrograding. And what's going to happen with this one is it's going to try to upright itself. So it's going this kind of area of elongation is going to try to kind of become more north-south oriented and start to weaken. And that would allow for this upper ridge to start building into the southern Gulf of Mexico, and that would allow some convection to get going where PTC 6 is at that moment. And this is what the GFS ends up doing. You can see that kind of upper low that's a lot weaker, and that upper anticyclone here that extends up north and is actually enhanced by the outflow of PTC 6 at this point. Of course, we're getting a bit further out. That's about 6 days from now. So it's kind of further out, not something we should be looking too hard at right now, but it is certainly a possibility. And there's some model signal that would uh, make this a possibility that it becomes something more of consequence. Probably still not something strong, but a possible tropical storm kind of meandering up somewhere north in the eastern Gulf. Luckily, the track forecast doesn't seem too hard to really too complicated. That is, while the strength might change a lot depending on where it goes and kind of small differences in where it is around these islands. It seems that it's going to, in the near term, be steered by the subtropical ridge and also by this trough ahead of it that is related to the wave it's in. And that will keep it kind of going on a west-northwest track near or over some of the greater Antilles, generally for the next 3 or 4 days. And so we'll see it in this general area, but once we start getting further out, maybe 5 or 6 days, the subtropical ridge will start to become more centered off the east coast here, or somewhere around this region. And as a result of that, that means PTC 6 will start getting into more southerly flow and be steered somewhere further up north, possibly somewhere around western Florida. But again, this is about a week out or even more than a week out, but what we do know is it's probably going to try to start turning a bit more north as it gets into the Gulf, unless something changes or we have this up or this trough can dig further down or something. But again, it's a little early to watch, and the main thing is what it does before it gets in this area. So we have a lot of time to watch what happens and kind of judge what will happen further down the line. Now, looking at the official National Hurricane Center forecast for PTC 6, again, it kind of just has that relatively simple west-northwest track for the time being, and that seems pretty reasonable. There are also a lot of tropical storm watches right now, and so there's a possibility for some of those stronger winds if it can become a tropical storm, or at least tropical storm force or entity. And another thing that we'll probably have to watch, especially towards the Dominican Republic, as the uh, air starts to moisten a little, is with these weak storms, you tend to have strong bursts of convection, even if they're disorganized, and those can cause very heavy rain. So, heavy, possibly flooding rain, especially in those mountainous regions where there is a possibility for mudslides. That's definitely a risk for a lot of the Greater Antilles, but especially as you get further west and dry air becomes less of an issue for PTC 6. Uh, the National Hurricane Center also kind of keeps it steady state as a weak tropical storm. uh, that's a pretty good call right now with the uncertainty, but there's again definitely the possibility it opens up into a wave and is weaker until it starts getting off into the ocean to some more favorable conditions here. Uh, and it is possible that it is stronger, but the not the NHC right now is taking kind of the middle right now, which again is pretty reasonable given the uncertainty at this point. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot going on in the Atlantic Ocean, and there's not a whole lot more to talk about PTC 6 at this point. So if you have any questions or comments about my video, please let me know. Thanks for watching.